Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and today I'll show you how to fold who I feel is the main face on the Xbox and for famous first person shooters alike, Master Chief. So let's get started. So let us begin by first folding this into the bird base. In case for those who don't know how to fold the bird base, you'll first collapse the paper like this. And then you will fold these edges to the very center line like this. So they're almost folding a kite shape thing right to there. And then you will petal fold it up. So this is what traditional petal fold looks like, for those who might not know. Especially when I mention it over time. But you're basically inside reverse folding those corners like this, and then you pretty much fold this part upwards like so, and then you will do the same thing on this side too. So this is the kite's base. The bird base, sorry. But right here, I will very quickly add more creases on this near the center of the paper like this. Just so we can have them there, because that'll be helpful. Right, so now, this is where we'll change it up. This is where things will be pretty interesting from here. But I'll first divide the top triangle, split it into thirds like this. You'll see where it is. You're just doing it along that crease line there. I'm gonna fold it behind to make this part easier. But you'll do, so next you will fold these corners in, and you'll see where the reference point is. It's just on that top crease line that's touching the edge there. And as you'll see, on both sides they will split into thirds as well. So once you get the top part, this part will be easier just to point out where to fold. You'll do the same thing here. Just like that on all four sides. So you'll pick a side now. Before we do that, now I'm gonna basically open seek this part and have it spread out like this. And I'm gonna try and stretch the paper up like this. So next, I'm gonna open sync, but you'll pick a side where you'll just open sync on this one part right here. Where just open sync the very edge like this. And this is where the leg flap is gonna be, along with the body, which will be narrowed. So the armor doesn't look too skinny. And the top part where the head is gonna be, you will actually open sync it just like this. And hey, if you like this, subscribe to the channel. It'll be awesome to have a big group going someday. Thank you for watching, by the way. But don't leave, just continue to enjoy this. That's all I'll say. So do it here. With the open syncs, now made. I'll next try to work on the legs. This is how I'm gonna do the legs here. Where I feel like when I record this, the way I did this, so you'll see I'm trying to pull the fatter flap all the way down, and as you'll see, a little bit of box pleating, at least a little technique revolved in it is going to be used here, because I seem to use like little snippets of box pleating. So you'll kind of see slowly right here in the footage. If I'm not explaining well, just go ahead and use that. But you'll have like this, almost this little triangle flap that's just sticking out like this. That's like a full right triangle flap right there. So you'll try to get it like this. So you're basically creating a square along with adding a little flap right there, which eventually will go away, as far as I remember. And you'll probably have to do this on both sides, I guess at the same time, because you can't just flatten the model completely and then do the same thing on the other side. You kind of had to do both of these at the same time as well. Just like this. The result you should have succeeded on is that now this middle flap is a lot longer now, which is perfect. And if you fold this flap up, you'll see what felt like the flaps we were creating. This is actually something cool, because now they're not really flaps anymore. So this is a really cool part of the collapsing, in my opinion. But now we will actually get out to the legs, and I'm actually going to use the point splitting technique. And for those who don't know, point splitting will be something like this. This is definitely a technique that was covered on back from Origami Design Secrets by Robert J. Lang. But something like this, where you'll first have a 22.5 fold like this, where then you'll push it up like so, and you're trying to unlock these parts. So this part is definitely a trickier version of point splitting, kind of, just because this one is trying to get nice long flaps for the legs so they don't appear too short on accident, as with other versions that have. But you'll see that you'll have like that little like obtuse triangle on the very top part of what we have here. And you'll see parts that kind of need to be synced. But you can take it, but you'll be able to see where they are. And I definitely had to play around with this, especially when I was recording this for the leg flaps. But all in all, this was a nice one take though. Because once you have this part right, you could then pretty much begin flattening it. But the way you're going to get the exact leg flap is to actually fold that quarter flap right to the very top of this part right here. As you'll see, that quarter flap would just fold it up. It's like hitting that very tip where the obtuse triangle I was mentioning starts. That's how you're going to get the maximum height for the legs, which is super important. Yeah, around here, I'm not sure how I flatten it. And yeah, I guess I should have done this before, but just fold the corner flap behind like this. Because we don't want it in the way, obviously. It's not gonna have, that quarter flap isn't gonna have any usages or any details or anything. Maybe you could. But then right here, you'll see how the model is actually gonna be flattened with those annoying parts that feel like we can't sync or anything. Because then we'll actually do an inside reverse fold right onto those points. and that you want to be sure the edge is lining up correctly, because that's how you're going to achieve it well. So this part might take some tries. You can watch the footage over and over again, which might be the easiest way, just to be able to look closely at what's going on. But definitely not far beyond intermediate, I believe, especially for some parts later on. But I don't think this is my hardest model though, so yay. You could probably fold this with a lot of time. Okay, so now the model is finally flattened. So that's always a nice breather to hit to now, because sometimes dealing with that isn't that fun. But now I'm gonna start narrowing the legs. But first I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna narrow the leg flaps like this, or I'm obviously gonna do an open sink right here. If you use a closed sink, then why? But you'll do it like this. To obviously narrow the legs to not, well, to keep it separate here. And then you'll do a spread squash on the very top like this. Because I want to have long legs as much as possible, especially where the previous design, well, the first fold of this didn't work. Or yeah, the first fold had very short legs. So this is much better. And that flap there could also sometimes get unloosed, that corner flap we folded behind. So next right here, before we move on, these parts need to be unlocked because they're loose and they make that part thick. So it's going to be easier to pull them out like this, especially where eventually I get to open sinking them. But just be sure that, of course, you're keeping it right there. Yeah, so now they're going to be those flap behind now, due to how everything is set up. So yeah, so be sure you unloosen those flaps there. Well, not flaps, but just those layers. And you'll have them in that angle there. So hopefully nothing too hard as I try to explain. So I need to rearrange the flaps very quick. Because the reason those small flaps are being created is because of this having folding certain parts down a bit. Okay, so you get something like this so far, and you'll have like those middle flaps in there. So what I'm gonna do next is that I'm gonna fold these flaps out. So you'll fold these flaps in, and then you'll do like flatten that one part, so you're creating like that triangle there. This is to prepare for an open sink right here. I believe the only part that's closed sink, I think this whole part is open sink actually. There might be a closed sink on that one triangle part I mentioned a second ago, but the whole part is open sync. Just be sure that flap is not being locked, of course, because we need that loosened out. So then I'm gonna fold this flap up, and yeah, do the same thing back here. Just like this. So moving on now to this next part of Master Chief. This next part is going to be requiring some flap arrangements here, because that big flap is actually going to be used for the, I'll just call it the sword for Master Chief. But if you look closely and see how it's arranged like this. There's not really like specific techniques I could explain here. But be sure that big flap is sticking out, and you have that small flap up there now. It's a similar technique that I used on my Origami Link years ago. So that's cool. So be sure that one part is inside reverse folded. So next I'm gonna start narrowing these flaps like this. So you'll see me do a spread squash down there while I'm trying to fold it around the legs, because I don't really want to narrow the legs, just the arms for now. So you won't be able to fold it all the way because of that one part there, as you'll notice. But once you're ready, you could go ahead, so you close sync that part, and then just open sync the remaining stuff. Just be sure you're open syncing that part on that triangle, or at least that one flap that looks like it's sticking out a little bit. So now you'll have that flattened out. So then I'm also going to work on syncing this part in too. So obviously when narrowing it, all the flaps need to be narrowed. This is also the one that's also going to connect to the big flap as well. This will be a much longer one. I think this is easier open sync compared to the previous one. That's because it's just, yeah, it's just around there. But I guess being a little bit bigger and, oh, I guess it is attached to that one part. So it might be a little bit tricky. But you'll simply find that it's just doing something like this. So that part there might be close sync. The part that's behind that middle triangle flap. So you'll get to it right there. So I'm gonna fold these down. because now I'm gonna also sink these parts in, of course. So this one might be the hardest part here. So fold it in like this, the best you can. You'll probably not be able to fold it all the way like this, but that's okay. Just be sure you do get the open sink. Do close sink that part for now. That one corner connecting to the neck of Master Chief. At least I'll make this part a little bit easier. And just right around here, I just fold that flap in. Right inside the valley of the open sink. Now I'm gonna unlock this part. And then this part I didn't fold ahead of time, but I'll open sink this part while inside reverse folding that little flap in the middle there too. I think following along here might be a little bit tricky, just so you know. So then fold out, inside reverse fold that part. And there's a tiny little flap that I for some reason need to open sink a little bit. There we go. So then I'm gonna open sink this part as well. Yeah, there's a ton of open sinks around the arms. If you thought my stag wheel before had a lot of open sinks, well, this one's a little bit more of a crazy amount as well. So don't judge me when I say that this model is super complex. Unless you really are in that level, then that's awesome. So next I'm gonna fold this part up for the legs. So I will have to pull up that part more. So the final result should look like this with those two flaps folded up like this. Right here. So then I'm gonna open sink in here. So I'm gonna open sink those flaps sticking out now. They need to be stick out, especially to make the open sinks easier. But now that we're done with that, we'll just go ahead and open sink those in so they won't be in the way anymore. So do it here as well, as I'll say before. And yeah, you want to be sure, I will point out just to be sure that one part is swivel folded like this. But you want to make that like obtuse triangle shape behind like this here. So it's not both showing underneath the legs and the arm flap. So it's a little bit of something clever that I've done there for the length of them, while not wasting too much paper. And then right here, I'm gonna unlock this flap here. And you'll keep it just like this, with just that part folded in. But we really just want to unlock these parts. Just be sure those bill flaps are right over that inside reverse fold on around that shoulder, like this. So that'll be the results of some of the more harder parts of Master Chief when folding him. So I'm actually going to start at least getting to some of the details now. This will be starting off with the head. So you'll first do something like this, where you'll have like those parts inside reverse folded in like so. Then you'll fold it down. You'll then go ahead and turn it over and pull these flaps all the way down like this. Okay, you'll do the same thing here. So that you'll have those two little flaps behind the head. But now, I'll pull these out, because that bill flap right there, it can't be super thick. So I have to do this here. But now that I'm doing this, I'm also going to widen the, well, I guess I'll widen the helmet. Well, I'll call it the helmet is what I mean. But I'll make it wider by doing it like this from that flap. Just from that side. And then I will do the same thing here like so. So keep the helmets wide enough, maybe not a whole ton. But what I'll do for the helmet is I'll pull this flap up and I'll do a spread squash right at the center there. By all means, there are many ways you could probably do the helmet. I always mention that. Of course, this is like the way I'm gonna design this helmet. So I'll do spread squash. I'll kind of pleat it up just a little bit. I'll swivel fold upwards like this to get that bottom part of the shape. Again, the helmet, while the concept of designing it wasn't hard, but getting it in the right shape to look like Master Chief is tricky by all means. But right here, I'll use a reverse fold underneath just to narrow that part off more. It'll look like you'll have a big head, but that's nice because then you can, on the other hand, you could definitely make the helmet thick enough. And then I'll fold these in. This will actually narrow it. It also gives this side, well, it's just for the side part of his visors right here. And I do want to, check to be sure that it'll be on the right height behind that middle flap there. That middle flap is going to be important in being sure that is a little bit above the head for a certain matter of detailing the model that I will eventually get into. So I'm going to narrow this part off a little bit more, as much as I can. And then I'm going to do the same trick as I did with the bottom part of the helmet, the top part here, to give that hood, well, I don't know which part you would call, but like the one tip above the helmet's visors, perhaps the one part that gives the iconic look for Master Chief. And then I'll fold this one part behind. So then I'm gonna pull these flaps out like this, and I'll make the helmets a little bit wider. So you'll see that it should be a nice square on the top. So then I'll round it a little bit. And then you'll fold the top part up like this a little bit. And these are pretty much the details, the necessary details for the helmet. Okay, so right behind here, I'm gonna narrow this layer here. So I'll do another express wash on the bottom here of the feet here. And then I'm just gonna, well, it looks like more of an open sink there. So then I'm just gonna fold these corners in around the neck. So what I'm going to try here next is I'm going to pull different layers. So those flaps in the center could have looked like middle flaps, but I'm actually going to do it at these spots here to create even taller flaps up here. So you'll do it around the sword flap, it'll look more like this from what I've done. I'll crimp it around, I'll narrow it, I'll do like swivel folds and just ways to be able to narrow it eventually. If the neck is too tall, then you could just pleat it behind. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use, so the other side, you don't have to do like any other pullings, as this is already good enough. Because I want to get those like those side parts that Master Chief has on his, I guess I'll call it his armor. So all that clunkiness there will be hidden when I fold this flap upwards like this. And I'll crimp the center part of the body armor. You'll notice that there's like also like an additional flap that seems to be sticking out as well. So that flap is like not gonna have any purpose. You could maybe do something with it. But all I did was just sink it in, like to push it in like that. Just to like completely hide it. So yes, I'm gonna pull that little middle flap out like this. And I'm gonna pull this one flap out too to unloosen it. And I'll fold that whole part right underneath like this. So that I'm actually gonna do, fold these parts in the legs. I'll do a spread squash here. And then push out flap upwards. Like this. So, to do the arms now, I'm first gonna, or at least on the one side where the one arm flap is shorter, I'm gonna spread it out like this, like do like an open crimp like that. And then I'm gonna fold it down like this, which will give it the pauldron detail around Master Chief's shoulders. Then I'm gonna wrap this part around somewhat on both sides. So yeah, I'm just winding them up like this. And then I'm gonna inside reverse fold up here a little bit. At least that's what it looks to me. I'm gonna create like a handgun. I don't know what the handguns look like in Master Chief at all. I kind of went with whatever I could with this. So now for the other arm, it's going to be a similar way I did with the other arm with the handgun. And you could definitely do different details with these, by the way. Like, you could also just make Master Chief wield a gun, like a bigger gun. But for this design, I decided to go with the something that's a little bit more iconic, which is the sword that he wields. Because not only does it look awesome, but it just looks iconic. So I just went with this way as an approach. So I'm gonna do like simple things where I'm basically widening the arms a little bit around here. And I definitely need to kind of do stuff behind, like this. Because again, I'm trying to get the pauldron details. So how do I get the sword then? Well, I'm gonna say it's gonna use box playing techniques. But how I do it is that I make. So what I do is I just do this kind of stretch here where I push it down. So I'm almost creating a normal sword. So I'll just first focus on the one side to get the length for the tip of the sword hilt, I guess. Then you'll see me do this because I'm gonna make the hands, the middle flaps, right in between. So it's actually a simpler concept than it sounds. Just try to pull off. Maybe might take some play arounds with it, especially for where you do this on. Just kind of be aware with that, so that way his arm doesn't look too short, but also it doesn't look too long, because that would be very annoying for that kind of detail. But from here, like once you just get that part, it's just going to be a lot of narrowings. And you'll kind of see like the way I designed the sword was to make the edge flaps like that. So this could be kind of color changed, which is cool, but I'm not really sure. But you could definitely play around with this, definitely. So you'll see that I narrow the corners a bunch around the sword. With the hands, I'll spread these parts off so I could get like the little pleats, the details for like his fingers, kind of, or just the curled up fist, which that's how he would want to wield the sword anyway. So I don't know why I said that. Right there, you'll see that I'll fold that middle flap up like this. Either it's his fingers, like the tip of his fingers, or it's just the back part of his hand. The way you position the sword like this will determine how that works. Either way, this is just the way I did it. And the rest of the details are straightforward from here. And these are the final results for my Origami Master Chief. Folding him was a lot of fun, and I hope that if you tried, that you did enjoy folding him like so.